Hello, this is Rich Larson, and welcome to the January 2020 edition of the IIBA Certification Chat Series. It's a monthly service we provide to answer any and all questions about certification, from why do it, to the application process, to studying, to exam taking, to recertification, you name it. Anything you want to ask is fair game here. So if you haven't done so already, please locate the GoToWebinar toolbar and find the question panel. That is how we submit the questions, and then I will be able to just read them out loud, and that gives me a chance to digest what you're asking for. And if need be, I'll ask for follow-up questions or input or whatever from you. Your handouts are in the handout section. The slides are there as a copy if you want to grab them and save them to your PC or whatever. They'll also be provided to you at the end of the session. One thing I want to point out is there's some big changes coming up in 2020 with IIBA CBAP and CCBA exams. So your handout here has that showing. There we go. It should be available on your screen. And essentially what's happening is they're switching over from a exam center type of exam to a proctored exam. And what that means, you can take it from any PC anywhere in the world with 24-hour notice. You can get your exam done, which is much more flexible than the old way. And as a result, there are some other kind of changes you should be aware of in terms of taking the exam. First of all, a couple of housekeeping details. There are no exams being offered for the first 15 days of January. Maybe you saw emails from IIBA. I assume if you got an application in progress that they've communicated with you. And starting next week, January 8th, you'll be able to start taking those exams. And if you have an application deadline that was due in January, they've extended that to February 20th. So they give you some grace period to actually sit for the exam in the new way. When you take a proctored exam, you're at a PC and you have to clear your desk of any papers or books or even writing materials that could be construed to be peeking at answers. So it's a different environment. I've not done it myself, but a close colleague, Andrea Brockmeyer from Watermark, has done that. And you have to show that your desk is free and use the camera on your PC to indicate that. And if you also have to make sure that you don't use your hand gestures. I don't know if that's supposed to be to communicate with someone in the room or whatever, but you need to look at the screen all the time, which is kind of stilted if you ask me. If you're in the habit of looking up in the air to think, you can't do that. So there are some challenges, let's say, in that. You also can't write anything down, which I also find quite challenging. So there's some differences there, but there are a lot of advantages to the proctored exam. So any questions you have, what questions you have about your own certification journey? Where are you at? Whatever. In fact, let me launch a poll to ask which certifications are you interested in. So let me get that launched. There it is. If you could indicate, please, which of the exams and or others, if you're interested in others. Yeah, you can also send it in through the question panel, which Shruti and Michael have done, and Carol is doing as well. Or you could take the poll. Let's see, 86% that did through the poll are CBAP, and then every person who sent in the questions. So primarily CBAP, a person in CCBA, a couple people in the AAC. Okay. So about 50% of you have voted so far. I'm not going to hold it over too terribly long in case people are not voting or away from their PC. So I'm going to close that. And I'm also going to share the results. So you can see the vast majority of you guys on the line are interested in CBAP. So I see that in most of these, but it's always good to know where you're at. So let me do another poll. As long as we're starting this way, I have a second poll to show, and that is, how far along are you? So I'm going to launch that second poll. Are you just looking into it through application finish, through my exam is soon, whatever? That gives me good insight into where you're at for what you're looking for here. So if you could please take a moment to just check that, which one, what fits your situation. So far, over half of you are just looking into it. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Carol said she's just started documenting her 7,500 hours. We could talk about that. Cool, cool, cool. I'm going to close that poll and share the results. As you can see, most of you are just looking into it, but a couple people are studying hard, which means your application's done and you're getting ready. And I think one person's exam is soon, so that's fabulous. If you are applying, you should know that there are some minimums. And Carol, by your response, you indicate that you already know what the minimum hours are for CBAP, which is 7,500 hours in the last 10 years. You have to have that spread amongst 4 different knowledge areas, at least 900 hours of experience. So it's got to be broad, not just deep. And what else can I tell you about that? Any other questions about documenting or requirements or anything like that? You can see that you need 35 hours of professional development. What that means is business analysis training. It doesn't mean webinars or reading books or going to conferences, or it's got to be a training class. Now, if you go to something like a BA World or a BBC where they offer tutorials or workshops, those do count, but not the actual conference itself. That tends to generate some questions sometimes. So 35 hours of training. If you're just in CCBA, it's only 21 hours. Okay, you need a couple of references. You may already be knowing this. I don't want to go over stuff you already know, so that's why I'm urging you to send me in your questions that you might have about the application process. If you're studying for the exam, which several of you indicated you are, bear in mind that there are different kinds of questions based on, well, let me back up a slide. In fact, this on the very bottom of this table, for CCBA, there are heavy scenario-based questions. There are also some knowledge-based questions too. But for CBAP, you get those, but you get a lot of case study-based questions. Maybe a third of the exam or more is based on case studies. There's longer written out situations, or maybe there's some diagrams that you have to interpret. And takes some more intense studying of those, and they like to make it more of an application-based exam that way. There are only 120 questions for that reason in the 3.5 hours, whereas CCBA, you have 130 questions in 3 hours. So Shruti is asking, I filled in the application worksheet. Now, what she's referring to, I assume, is Watermark Learning provides a free application worksheet, and you can write to info@watermarklearning.com to get a copy if you don't have one. So you're asking, would like to get it reviewed before submitting. Can someone from Watermark help with reviewing the worksheet? Generally, we don't provide that service, but you should direct your question to info@watermarklearning.com, and they can give you the different options we could provide for that. Do you have any other colleagues that are currently a CBAP, Shruti? Let me ask you that. I see why. So why don't you write to our info@watermarklearning.com and ask them that same question. Sharon is asking, what should you do if you're light on the 35 hours of training in the last 4 years? Well, okay, you've asked came to the right place, because Watermark Learning is a training company. We do much more than just CBAP. So there are several courses that you could take from Watermark. So you could, that's one way to do it, fill in some skill gaps. It doesn't matter the kind of course as long as it's business analysis related. And there are several Watermark offerings you could take for that. There are live classes, there are virtual classes, there are video on demand classes you could take. So that is our best advice. It has to be a class, by the way. So that's why I'm answering kind of the way I am, because there are different options once you recertify for getting CDUs, continuing development units. But for the initial application, they have to be training classes. So, of course, there are a lot of other training vendors out there you could go to as well. But you should go. My advice to everyone is that you should go to a training vendor to get those hours. The other option, let me just bring up in fairness, is if you have a study group that you are aware of, they can qualify for the hours if they set up the study group according to IIBA standards. So check with your local IIBA chapter to see if there is a study group available. You could also try searching online to find a virtual study group to see if there are any that are, I don't know any that are currently running. They come and go as the chapters are able to muster the volunteers to run them. We've interacted with a lot of chapters over the years that tend to all share that same struggle because it's a volunteer operation and sometimes tough to get volunteers. It's a bit of work to put on one of those. So that's why I don't even want to pretend to guess who's running a current study group right now, but search the web, check with your local chapters. That might be another option for you if a training class is not in the cards, not available for you, like budgetary wise or whatever. Thanks, guys, for the questions. That's good. That's good. Another thing about training classes, frequently get asked questions like, well, does something like Six Sigma count? And in the past, IIBA has not allowed that, which surprises me because that's really all about process and process modeling and process analysis, although it's more than that, and that may be why they don't say that that counts. And if you take a product owner class, because a lot of business analysts act as a proxy product owner, and that's not strictly business analysis either, so you would think that would count, but it doesn't. If you have any doubt, you should write to certification@iiba.com. Let me double check my resources here because we've updated these recently. Yes, right here. But if you look at the slide that has IIBA certification resources in the top row, there's the email address you should check on for IIBA. If you want to write to them, if you have any doubts about whether a training class you have taken qualifies, you can submit it to them and ask them. They have been known to reject applications because the training doesn't count. You might have 35 hours of something, but if it's, say, a project management or, like I said, Six Sigma or Agile or what have you, they will reject it. It could be underlying competencies. So, for instance, influencing skills would count. But IIBA will be able to give you the final answer on that. All right. Okay. As I skipped over a slide, although these are not meant to be any presentations, there is a slide here talking about the application worksheet, which we talked about briefly. Remember to write to the info mailbox at Watermark Learning to get a copy. Back to the blueprint for a second. When you're studying, a few of you are either ready to study, studying hard, or your exam is soon. So let's take a look at this for a second. Be aware that the CCBA and CBAP exams are based on this so-called blueprint, which says that the given core knowledge areas that are over here on the left have percentages of questions that are pulled from their exam, not pulled from, they've already written the questions for the exam, okay? They're in a fixed block of exam book, I think is what they call it. Anyway, 12% for CCBA and 14% for CBAP are in the BA planning and monitoring. And you can go along down the line. 12% are elicitation, 15% for requirements, lifecycle management, and so forth. You can see the percentages, and the whopping 30% of your questions are going to come out of requirements analysis and design definition. What that means is you need to really spend most of your time there. And that includes the techniques. There are many of the 50-some techniques in the BABAC on requirements analysis and design definition. So expect a lot of questions on techniques, but also a lot of questions on the tasks in RADD, as we call it for short oftentimes. And does this mean elicitation and collaboration and I don't have to study? Well, you're going to get 12% of your questions. And we did some math, and it rounds up to 18 questions roughly. So you're going to still get 18 questions. Granted, 45 questions on RADD are a lot more, but it means that you may have to study that less simply because you don't have as many questions on it. So I would use this as part of your study plan and make sure you spend the most quality time on those areas. And if you subscribe to Watermark's online study exam, then do most of your drill work on those knowledge areas. Now, the others are pretty well spread out, aren't they? I mean, between 14, 15, 15, 12, and 14, that's pretty evenly spread out. So unlike the previous exam where there were some spikes, 2 or 3 different knowledge areas stood out, now there's just the one. So I don't know what that says other than what I already told you, but I would use this definitely for your planning. And Diane is asking, what's the passing grade for CBAP? We don't know because IIBA has kept that a closely guarded secret, but our best guess based on other exams, particularly like the PMP, is around 70%, 70%. So that means out of the 120 questions, you could get, and I used to know the answer offhand, I wish, and of course I can't find my calculator when I want it, but out of 120 questions, times 0.3 roughly, you could get, no, I did the math wrong. 120 questions times a third of them wrong is 36 questions wrong. So what does that mean? I mean, that's kind of just a number. And what I advise people though, when you're taking your exam, is to make your best guess on every single question, whether you know it or not, because you don't get credit for questions you left unanswered, nor do you get penalized. The only penalty you get is if you don't answer a question or you answer it wrong. So give it your best shot. Shruti is asking, does the role in application has to be BA or BAPM, or can it be something? Your role can be anything as long as what you did is business analysis work. So let's say you were a BA and a PM on a small project. You could list both BA and PM, and then you wouldn't put down all the hours because some of that was spent managing the project. So you put down what you estimate you did as a BA. I hope that answers your question, because you are judged on the basis of the work you did and not the role you played or your job title. IIBA is very specific about that. Eric is asking a similar question, I think. I'm changing my career to a BA. What exam do I qualify for? Although you plan for CBAP, please advise. Now, it depends. If you are, so let me ask you, Erica, have you done any business analysis work in the past, in past jobs? If you're changing a career to a BA, have you done elicitation or requirements management, requirements analysis like modeling or prioritizing requirements? That's my first question. How much business analysis experience do you have in the past? Because you need those 7,500 hours to qualify for CBAP. So while we're waiting for Erica, another thing I could mention is that the ECBA is designed for people that are either real new, don't have even the number of hours to qualify for CCBA, which is 3,750. If you look at this one in the middle here, CCBA requires you to have 3,750 hours spread over the last 7 years. Whereas you can see work experience for ECBA is NA. There's nothing needed. And that might be what's right for you, Erica, if you're transitioning to a role as a BA. She says, I was a food safety inspector. I inspect production factories, write reports, submit counsel clients at factory standard operations. Sounds like good background for transitioning into a BA. Some of that work might qualify, but I think you'd probably be short of even the 3,750 hours. I think CBAP is a great goal. It will take you some years to get there. That's fine. I think it's good to have goals, and to me, the CBAP is a sign of professionalism. It's a good career aspiration. It is a signal to your employer that you're really serious about your profession. And I've heard from CIOs, top leaders of organizations, who say that the value to them of a certification is that your dedication to a profession shows through when you get certified. All right, so hope that answers your question. I would focus on the ECBA to begin with, and that's a great way to get started, I think. That's why IIBA created that. Michael says, a business analyst is any person who performs business analysis tasks described in the BABAC guide, no matter what their job title or organization. Thank you. Sounds like a quote right for the BABAC. That's good. So no matter what even as a food safety inspector, you probably have done some business analysis work, to Michael's point. Eric is asking, back when I was preparing for certification, I attended a similar webinar and the recommended number of study hours was 100. Maybe that came from me. Is this still the same? Should it vary across the different certifications? Actually, yes. The 100 hours is based on surveys we've done for CBAP and CCBA. We should probably do another survey now that ECBA has been around for a few years. We get a large enough sample size, but still, the 100-hour number has been true for at least 2 surveys over 10 years. And CCBA is probably pretty close to that because the exams are, quite similar actually, but probably maybe 80 to 90 hours for CCBA, not a lot less. And for ECBA, boy, we have, like I said, have not done survey work, so this is just a guess off the top of my head. It's closer to 50 hours because you are tested on the entire BABAC. If we go back and look at the blueprint, this sort of confuses a lot of people. Well, challenges, let's say, not confuses, challenges people. Because you can see you've got exam questions from all over the BABAC, plus other chapters of the BABAC, the chapter 1 and chapter, I think it's 9, the competencies and concepts, and chapter 10, techniques. So you really have that challenge. You need to read the BABAC and be familiar with a good share of it. So even 50 hours is probably right in the ballpark for ECBA. Shruti says, do you have any survey from Watermark students who passed CBAP and how their career improved after this exam in terms of job prospects, offers of compensation? No, but IIBA has done that, and as they should. They've done a couple of salary surveys that show people earn on average more by having the CBAP. I hate to suggest this. I'd love to give you an exact link of where to go, but it's out on their website. I'm going to make a note to see if we could dig that up and put it in future chat sessions. IIBA salary survey. My guess is if you did a web search, you would be able to find that. They've done 2 of them now. One is a couple years old only, and that would be one to check out. Eric, thank you. It was for me. So Eric, how are you doing on your certification journey? Where are you at, and what are you shooting for? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but since you've been back, good to hear from you. Want to hear where things are going with you. Currently CCBA, about to prep for CBAP. Excellent, good. So I like to hear that, Eric, because I've counseled people before that if you don't have a number of hours to qualify for CBAP, definitely go for the CCBA. It's a good certification. It's a good starting point. It is a way to get yourself immersed in all of the standards that are in the BABAC. I think it's a really good document. It's each version of the BABAC is an improvement, one over the other. So we're in version 3 now, and it is a good representation of standards across the world on the practice of business analysis. I know I'm sounding like an IIBA spokesperson here. I'm not. I am echoing them because that's really what was the purpose. A lot of times I get the question, well, why should I care about why should I care about certification? You know, I'm doing business analysis just fine in my company. Why do I need that? And my first answer is, okay, fine. If you don't see a need, that's cool. Not everybody needs or wants to get certified. But what it does is organizes and unites us in a common language and set of practices that makes communication easier, easier to hire people, easier to move around. And if we talk that common language, a lot of positive benefits for that. So thank you, Eric. Eric highly recommends our study exams. Also have your flashcards right on the desk next to me. Excellent. Thank you, Eric. I'm glad they're helpful. That's good. Terminology is a big issue, isn't it? And I really think that's part of what the whole certification journey can do for us. Erica says, do you mean no questions on the first 4 knowledge areas listed on the? No, I don't mean that. What I mean by this, okay, IIBA does not list any percentages from the first 4, which is in a way a disservice. You will get questions from them, but what they do is they mix them into the bottom 6. They started down the path of a blueprint for CBAP. They kept it for CCBA, and they changed direction in ECBA. And I'm glad they did, because they give you a sense of the broader numbers of questions you're going to get. And when we put together our online study exams, that proved to be a little bit of a challenge for us. Like, okay, if there's a question, a basic question on the BA profession, or certainly underlying competencies, or heck, all the techniques, where do you do with those? Well, you bury them in the knowledge area that they're most closely related to. And that's what we did. We just used our judgment and assigned our techniques questions to a particular knowledge area. And we think we did a good job of it, but it still was a challenge. And that's the people actually wrote the real exam. That's what they did too. Shruti is saying a slightly unrelated question to the certification. Will artificial intelligence becoming more popular and a lot of automation happening in companies? Does BA as a career has a good future? Yes, it does. And I'll tell you why. My wife, Elizabeth Larson, has done a lot of writing and speaking about artificial intelligence, and the fact that the need for translators, and that's what a BA does after all, isn't it, is a growing need in organizations. By translator, what she means by that is being that conduit between, say, the data scientists who are trying to train the AI to do what an organization wants in terms of whether it's a chatbot or a ordering system or security, whatever. There's a big BA role in that. Yeah, and I would expect IIBA in the future to follow down that path. It's still early days, but I do see a really, really important future. Now, whether you're called a business analyst or not, I don't know. Remember, the title is not important, as Michael had pointed out, but I do see a really bright future that way. So thanks for that question. Sharon says, how does CBAP account for agile methods? Well, plenty. There are tons of techniques in the BABAC that are applicable in agile environments. Likewise, the version 3 was heavily rewritten to account for adaptive versus predictive methods. And so as a result, you'll see language carefully written into the tasks and techniques that account for it. So it's plenty there. You're not going to get pure agile questions. That's more for like a certified Scrum Master or CSPO certification to take care of, but you will be asked in relation to that. Michael is saying, are there boot camps to help study for the CBAP? Yes, Michael, you came to the right place. Watermark is the leader in certifying. We've trained thousands of people to get their certifications. And we have live classes, either in person in Minneapolis, but we have monthly virtual classes that are also live that are available from anywhere in the world, plus the video on demand courses. In fact, if I may be so bold, since you asked that question, whoops, here we go. Here are the upcoming classes. On these chats, and certainly on our website, is a list of the various classes available. There's January 20th, February 24th, and then Anytime Learning, really, which is now called Video on Demand, for all the certifications. So there's tons of options available to you. Thanks for that question. Diane has left, but I'm going to answer her question. Hopefully she'll read the recording or listen to it. Are there any Agile analysis questions on the CBAP? And again, that's very similar to the question I just answered. There's a separate certification for Agile analysis. And so that's what IIBA has done in terms of addressing those really pointed Agile analysis. Does that make sense? As I said earlier, there are questions that are applicable to an Agile environment already in the CBAP with both the techniques, and to some extent you might get some of the knowledge questions as well, but the techniques will be probably the best representation of Agile. And then the AAC exam is where to go if that's what your career interest is. I think a couple of people indicated they were interested in that. So sorry you had to leave, Diane, but hopefully you'll hear this, and the rest of you got a chance to hear that. And it reminds you we're out of time right now. I want to thank you for your interest and your questions, and to stay tuned and come back, as Erica's done again, next month for a refresher and, I don't know, hopefully a pep talk. I really believe in certification. When it first came out in 2007, I was one of the early adopters. I was in the first batch of testing after their pilot test, and I was really psyched up for it, although I wasn't as prepared as I should be, which kind of made me want to help others, because I sort of struggled in my test, and I passed, but I felt very nervous. I thought I was going to fail it halfway through it, and I persevered. I'm glad I did, because it taught me a lot of valuable lessons about the need to, that's part of the 100-hour rule comes from. I think I was a little bit less than that, and I paid the price. So anyway, guys, a couple last quick questions. Which is better, reading Watermark or the BABAC? Both. I think you need to read the BABAC at least once, for sure. We wrote our CBAP study guide to help people understand and make a little bit more real and approachable with examples and just the writing style and so forth. So a lot of people have benefited from that, and that's what motivated us to write it. It's our third edition. We've had one for every edition of the BABAC, and it's something that we think is of benefit. A lot of study groups and other trainers use that book. We certainly use that book in our training class, as you get, as well as the online study exams too. So if I could put in a note for that. You say online or hard copy. Currently, it's only hard copy. I mean, the company may decide to make a soft copy edition available in the future, but right now it's only the hard copy. And we will ship that to you wherever you are if you take a training class, or if you buy it, for that matter as well too. So, okay, guys, any last questions before we leave? How do I get how much? It is probably discounted right now on Amazon. I think the best way to do it is to go to Amazon. It was around $60 last time I checked. I have not checked recently, so that's what I would do. Go to Amazon and search for CBAP certification prep or something like that, and we should come up when you do that. So it's in that territory, 60 some dollars. So check that out. And you can buy it from our website as well. And I think we have like a standard 30% discount if you go to our website for that. Okay, thanks for asking, Erica. All right, folks. No more questions are in. I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you so much for your interest in your questions, and all the best in your certification journey. It's a great one. I hope you enjoy it and appreciate it and succeed. Thank you much. Have a great 2020. Oops, one last question. If you're an IIBA member, you can get the BABAC for free thank you, Carol. Thank you for mentioning about the BABAC. You can get free download. So if you're an IIBA member, it's well worth it. You also get a discount on the exam fee. So thank you for mentioning that, Carol. Bye, everybody.